the two of them went to one particular tree and joined hands, one facing the opposite direction. So they both held the tree between them and said whoever was going to cut the tree would have to saw through them first. I'm sure there's nobody on this call that will be involved in that kind of advocacy, because it's like standing in front of a trailer and, saying whether the trailer has brakes or not, it should not move on. So advocacy can be sometimes problematic, and advocacy can make us to be unpopular, because if people don't share our views, they'll just see us as people who love to create problems. So we have people who are human rights advocates, and I'd like to ask a question here. So the End SARS movement, was that a form of advocacy? Any takers? Was the End SARS movement a form of advocacy? And if yes, why do we think so? Anybody, please. I think I see a
Thank you
hand
very
up.
much.
Yes.
I will
Yes,
say
please go on.
yes. I will say yes because from what you have said so far, you said advocacy is helping people to find their voice, promoting oneself or group of people voice. It was a good medium at that time to be able to shed light on experience of people when it comes to injustice, harassment by the NSAS thing. So I would say yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Tomori, I see that you have your hand up too. What do you think?
Yes, just to add to what the previous speaker said, I also choose yes. But the addendum I want to add was that those people that were also kind of agitating too, most of them are in the government today, and we can even see the low performance from some of them. Some of our ministers today were actually part of those people that led the NSAS demonstration.
Yes.
So we see some youth also eating the palliatives that were meant to be given to the poor. So it's a way of advocacy and also exposing the negative aspect of those people that were also agitating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So maybe we should, at this point, quickly mention what advocacy is not. Like Mr. Ayola requested when we're asking for people's expectations. So advocacy is not just being a troublemaker and seeking attention or seeking popularity or using social causes or social issues to gain traction either on social media or for cheap popularity or just for the purpose of trending. So people look at our objectives, people look at the policies we are pushing for, people look at our sincerity, people look at our credibility and our antecedents. And just like Mr. Tomori mentioned, if at the end of the day, people do not see, or people see incongruency in what we advocated for and our lifestyles or what we later do, then we lose our ability to again stand up for some of those causes. So we see so many people in Nigeria who have maybe worked on one project or the other or advocated for one cause or the other, not really being given attention now because people do not believe that they are credible sources. And once an advocate loses his credibility, it's going to rub off on every other thing it touches. for advocacy. People are not going to pay attention to you. So in other words, we need to protect our reputation. We need to protect our image. We need to be clear about our advocacy objectives and to see them through, to be sure that what we're doing tallies with what we are preaching. Now, I would want us to also quickly look at the other forms of advocacy as we've identified. So we have people who are advocates for human rights. So they promote equity, they promote equality, they advocate for dignity of every human. And we could just come up with a long list of concepts of policies under human rights. I've worked in the area of gender, and under gender, I've worked in aspects that have to do with gender-based violence. I've worked on child marriage. I've worked on equity in higher institution or higher education. And in doing this, I've learned a lot. And that's the beauty of evidence-based advocacy. You may go out from one point of view, but by the time you gather evidence, by the time you're on the field, by the time you interact with people, by the time you conduct surveys, by the time you examine contents, you come out richer than before, and you become very versatile, very highly informed, and very passionate about what you're advocating for. I'm saying this because it's going to be difficult to convince anybody with your arguments if you yourself is yet to be sold to the argument. So advocacy is not a child's play. Advocacy is something that we go into with all readiness and with all preparedness and with as much evidence as possible, because whatever it is we're advocating for, there may also be people who are strongly against that view. And we have to be ready with our arsenals to be able to push through with our policies. We also have political advocacy, and this speaks to legislations, this speaks to ideologies, this speaks to policies that affect the lives of people. I think as we go on, we would again see if there are others that we want to call attention to. We'll see that some of them are broad umbrellas. So under human rights advocacy, we could advocate for people with disability. We could also advocate for gender. We could advocate for children's rights. I was looking through a document on some child rights act that Nigeria is signatory to. And some of the things I saw there baffled me, because if really as a country we are signatory to some of those things, then we should not have children on the streets who are homeless. We should not have children who are not in school. We should not have children who are married off before, maybe before they've even, I was going to say before they finished primary school, but I'm just remembering that some of these children did not even go to school, because the rights that we signed says that the Nigerian government will protect every child, will provide basic education, will provide accommodation, will provide health care, free health care. I think it says till age 5. And some of those acts also speak to the fact that a woman is entitled to free antenatal care. Please, Mr. Falabi, I don't know, you are in practice. Are these really true? Is it true that we have a policy that antenatal care should be free?
Yes, it's part of the reproductive health care for women of reproductive age during pregnancy, but it is not being practiced. It's not being practiced. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. So one duty of advocacy, I think someone wants to speak. Or is that a chat? Adefunke Adeshina, permits me, please. Do you wish to speak? Or any other person? I thought, okay, thank you. So sometimes advocacy is just about creating awareness, because I'm sure that there are many more people.
Hello, please.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, we can hear you.
Hello. Okay. Sorry,
Hello,
I
we
didn't
can
get
hear
the question
you.
very well. I didn't
Yeah,
get the
I
question.
thought you were trying to speak.
No, no.
Oh, okay.
It's because
Thank
there's
you.
noise around me. Sorry. There is noise around, but
Okay.
I'm using my earpiece. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, like I said, advocacy is also about creating awareness, because people cannot enjoy rights that they are ignorant about. So, there's always that need to know. There's the need to bridge the gap between those who know and those who do not know. There's also the need to make people that are responsible for some of these policies to act on those policies or those acts which they are signatory to. I don't know if there are any comments or questions before we go on. Comments, questions, anybody? Any comments? Okay, so let's go on. Now, what would be your role in advocacy? Are we all going to be like the people I saw at the secretariat this morning carrying placards? Or are some of us going to support the people in the lead? Basically, we look at certain roles in advocacy. Some of us are just going to be educators. I just mentioned the fact that advocacy entails creating awareness. So some of us are going to go to the books, we're going to go to the policies, we're going to go to the yellow pages, we're going to dig and find information on the causes that we're advocating for. Youth mental health, risk communication, infant feeding, gender-based violence. You cannot be a good advocate if you are not knowledgeable. So your role as an advocate could just be to educate, to share the information you know, to let people be aware, as the case may be. Now, some advocates perform the role of lobbyists. I mentioned earlier that I don't want us to see lobbying in the Nigerian context. So maybe we should quickly talk about what lobbying is and what lobbying is not. And I'd like to ask, when you hear the word lobbying as a Nigerian, what comes to your mind? Anybody, please. There are some people who have not spoken to us today. May I call on Azan Ogunwemimo to please tell us, what do Nigerians refer to as lobbying?
Hello?
Hello,
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
good afternoon.
Yes, I'm currently in transit, just trying to manage my voice. I don't know if it's clear enough.
We can hear you, or I can hear you.
Okay, lobbying is more or less trying to create some rapport with people at the helms of affairs in terms of to influence their policy making to suit or to be in line with your aspiration in terms of the advocacy you are pursuing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've given us the correct definition of lobbying. I want somebody to give us the Nigerian definition of lobbying. When Nigerians say, oh, I want to go and lobby the permanent secretary, or I want to go and lobby the local government chairman, what do they mean by that?
Hello, good afternoon all. I think in the Nigerian way, lobbying is synonymous to bribery.
Thank you very much. So on our call this afternoon, our discussion is not about bribing anybody. So when we say lobbying here, we are speaking to systematic efforts to get people to be on the same page with us. We're speaking to activities that we engage in to let people in positions of authority, to let government officials, to let policymakers to agree with us or to be on the same page with us as far as the issues we're advocating for are concerned. Thank you very much for that definition. So some of us are going to be lobbyists. That will be your role as an advocate. So you influence policy decision, you use your position to speak to people who are in positions of authority, to take a look at the submission of your group and to see what they can do to not just create policies in support of the recommendations of the group, but also to see to it that those policies are acted upon. I just mentioned to us a few minutes ago that the Child Rights Acts that Nigeria is signatory to are laudable, but are they being implemented? So a lot of the times, people who are good with lobbying help us with activation. They help with negotiation. And let me be quick to say this. Negotiation does not always mean that we take 5 points to the table and get all 5 points settled or sorted. Negotiation might mean taking 5 points to the table and getting the policymakers to agree with us on 3 or 3.5, and them asking us to drop one of those concepts because they have already agreed to do some others. That is negotiation. So negotiation is not getting it 100% right. Negotiation can be getting a leg in and then getting further support. So we've mentioned that you can be an educator, you can be a lobbyist. And let's go to another serious aspect of this. You can choose to be an activist as an advocate. So I've cited at least 2 examples of activists today. Can anyone remind us, when does an advocate become an activist? I'll leave the floor open. If nobody speaks, then I'll call on anybody on the call. When does an advocate become an activist? Anybody? We've talked about a few examples today, so we can borrow from that. Yes, please. The floor is open. An advocate as an activist, not an educator, not a lobbyist, but an activist. Yes, please. Okay, so permit me to use, oh, thank you very much. Mr. Falabi, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Like you said earlier, that advocacy become activist when the purpose is just to make trouble. And when somebody is seeking popularity, to just gain unnecessary popularity on the social media. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Falabi. Now I have a weakness as a teacher. I always try to make every answer that is given to be correct. But I want to challenge the class. Do we agree with Mrs. Afolabi on this? Are advocates who are activists always troublemakers? Or can we have advocates who are activists and are not troublemakers?
Yes, we
Mr.
can. Sorry,
Guemo, I
can I
see that you
switch?
want to. Yes,
It's
please.
possible.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, activism is not synonymous to troublemaking.
Okay.
It depends on how people they decide to go about their activism. Usually,
Okay.
activism is done to call attention to pressing issues, and it is done by rabble rousers who believe that better things can be achieved when done right. So it's not necessarily troublemaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to agree with Mr. Ogunwemimo. We can engage in activism without being disruptive or without being negatively disruptive. And we can speak to those in position of authority with a lot of venom, because sometimes the issues that we're advocating for involve the lives of people. So activism does not necessarily have to be violence. Activism does not necessarily have to be done in a way that causes harm to others, because we also have to be careful lest our good be evil spoken of. We would see that oftentimes once people hear that there's going to be a demonstration, people are wary because yes, advocates, activists mean well, but ill-intentioned people can steal this mandate from them. And this is why in advocacy, we make sure that the people that we call on board are people who have shared values. They're people who know what we're advocating for. They're not just layabouts, they're not touts, they're not infiltrators who would steal the mandate and then turn what is supposed to be a peaceful demonstration, a peaceful engagement into a riot. We always have to take note of this. So activism is not always negative. Activism is not always trouble making. And ideal advocacy would involve activism because sometimes we cannot accomplish much in advocacy without activism. We don't want a situation where we would appear to be winking in the dark. Now, there are two other roles that we'll quickly talk about before we move on. The first one is the role of a supporter. Advocacy will not work if we do not have people behind the scene who are providing different kinds of support. And the support they provide for us can be physical, the support can be financial, the support can be moral, the support can be emotional. So they may not be activists, they may not be educators, they may not know people in governments that they can lobby, but we have people who are on board, who are supportive, who are doing all they can to make our advocacy a success. Now, I would like some assistance here. Can anyone speak to any engagement they've had and different kinds of support that they received from people? Anybody? Anybody, please? Anyone who's engaged in any form of advocacy and has received support? Okay. That's people in the media. provide support for us. Philanthropists provide support for advocacy. Faith-based organizations provide support. Oh, thank you. Mr. Tomori, I appreciate that. Please, let's hear you.
Okay, just let me tell you about the organization where I presently work now. So
Yes,
when we got the grants in Ondo State and Ekiti, that was in 2017. So having conducted an assessment of the MIE system, I work in strategic information back then. That's what we call monitoring evaluation stroke earth informatics. So when we conducted our internal assessments, we found out about the gaps that were kind of being a militating factors toward our pursuing if we are not very careful. So we just have to pay advocacy visit to the state governments and other critical stakeholders that we know can actually have a positive effect on the program we are to kind of do. And in that aspect, advocacy might be for people to actually raise funding or some activities that they are lacking. So the people we actually visited supported us by provision of infrastructures as well as human resource that we needed to actually carry out our activities successfully in the two states. That's part of the advocacy and community engagement that we carried out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that inspiring contribution. So in advocacy, a tree does not make a forest. So there are people who have skills, there are people who have resources that we would need and whose support will go a long way to making us to achieve our objective. Thank you very much. I can see your hand up. Miss Nike Oyenei, please, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself. Thank you. Miss Oyenei, we are waiting. Oh, I hope it's not that she has network issues. And is still up, but we can't hear her. Okay. Well, we'll let you know again.
Hello.
Hello. Oh, okay. Now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, ma. So, sometimes ago, I worked with an organization with the focus on harmful traditional practices affecting women and children. So one of the main traditional practices was the issue of FGM. So we're also into advocacy, reaching out to the major stakeholders, and we had support from donor organizations, international organizations that supported the cause. And we also had support from the communities, religious leaders, community leaders, and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'm glad, especially because you talked about support from the community. If we're not careful, our advocacy can be dead on arrival if the community we want to work with does not buy into what we're advocating for. You said you worked in the area of harmful cultural practices, especially female genital mutilation. We can get to a community that says, well, you say it's harmful, but it's traditional for us. We do not see the harm here, and they will not support. I would like us, after the call, anytime we're less busy, to please Google Nothing for us without us. Nothing for us without us. I'll type it in the chat. Nothing for us without us. And it speaks to an advocacy that's almost failed because the community was not involved. Yes. So I'm sure some of us must have heard about the long-lasting insecticide-treated nets campaign and how in some communities these nets were used for fishing, some sold theirs, and it was just put to so many different uses apart from that for which it was intended. Another experience we had several years back was with advocacy for I'm trying to get the correct reference to them now. Commercial sex workers, on the use of I think the advocacy was on the need for them to negotiate condom use. And there was a very disturbing incident where one of the people that had been spoken to, when they asked her, okay, so have you been negotiating condom use? Told the person who was interviewing her, oh, yes, yes, I now negotiate condom use. So anybody that comes for services and does not want to use condom pays more. Now, that is failure of advocacy because what was being advocated was not about increasing the money for somebody who refuses to use condom, but rather insisting that if this is a trade you must do, then you must use condom. So the community is important. The people we're advocating for are important. Otherwise, it will be an effort in futility. Now, let's quickly mention some benefits of advocacy, or if we like, why is advocacy important? And I'd like us to flag it off. If advocacy is not important, you won't be on this call. So everyone on this call that has not spoken gets to speak. So I'm going to use the list. We're going to start with Adeboye Janet. Why is advocacy important? Thank you. Please unmute yourself and speak. And while we're waiting for Adeboye Janet, please let Busola Sunday Ajagbe get ready to speak after her. What's the importance of advocacy? Why is advocacy important? And after Busola, we'll take Adefunke Adeshina in that order. Thank you. So we're waiting for 3 people to speak. Any one of them can go first. Why is advocacy important? What is the importance of advocacy? Why are you on this call? Yes,
Hello,
please,
ma.
we'll start. Yes, thank you. Please go ahead.
Hello. Additional on the line.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go
Okay,
on.
okay. Thank you, ma. Just to drop my own points now. I think that advocacy is important to be able to get the buy-in of the people we want to reach out to or the partners we want to collaborate with. Apart from being able to get them on board, it also provides an avenue for other people to have a peep into our own view or our own reasoning. Because by the time you're going for advocacy, you lay down your point, and the other party lays down their own point. Okay, we didn't see it like this before. Now we understand. So whatever issue we want collaboration on, everybody is clear on the benefits and probably the demerits. So and then decisions can be taken based on the right information, having the right information to work with. Then advocacy is also important as a form of, would I say, according the partners or the other party the respect, the expected respect. So advocacy is not just about we want you to agree with us. It's also saying, okay, as we are going into this relationship or into this project, um, we have to first of all come to see you, lay down the points. We're not just entering the community and saying this is what we want to do, this is the project we want to execute. You accord the party, the necessary party or authority, the due recognition. So I think I want to stop on these 3 points, if you agree with me, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your intervention. So
Yes,
what you have said also speaks to nothing for us without us. And we should not see ourselves as the know-all or be-all. And we're not coming from the point of view of, oh, we are the ones that have all the aces, we have all the answers, and we've come to force this pill down your throat. And this is a very good reason why we need to identify our stakeholders and we need to engage our stakeholders. And we'll be talking about some of the skills we need in advocacy. And you've already mentioned one of them for us. We need to respect the opinion of others, and we need to learn to listen to others and borrow from their knowledge and not assume we know it all. Thank you very much. Yes, who is coming up next? Adeboye Janet, I can see you on. We're not hearing you very well. You're sounding very far off. We can't hear you very well. It's just a bit better, but it's still faint.
Okay. I've increased.
Okay, this is better now.
Can I go on?
Yes, we can, or I
Hello?
can. Please go on. Please speak on.
All right. Importance of advocacy, from what I've learned today. Advocacy helps shape policy by raising awareness that an important issue that people might have not known. For example, the antenatal care. I'm just knowing for the first time now that antenatal care should be free for women on reproductive age. So things like this, the advocacy will make people to know that they can even talk about it or remind it. Maybe somebody can just bring it out and start to advocate for it. And also it gives a voice to marginalized or underrepresented people, like people with disabilities. They should get to know their rights and also stand up and so that they can be a better person in society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. So who is going next? Why is advocacy important? Or what are the benefits of advocacy? Anybody? Or do I still go to my lists? Thank you. Sunen, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I'm afraid to pronounce the other one for fear of so please tell us the correct pronunciation of your name.
Sonne Atinge.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, another benefit of advocacy is that, especially like on the part of government, it can help to make the government to make commitments or do some things that they are promised to do. Like you gave an example of the Child Right Act and some of these conventions, especially international conventions that our governments have signed. But you find out that when they come back from those conferences or signing of those documents, they tend to relax and no longer do them. But through advocacy, we can remind them and help them to make commitments to putting those things, our agreements that they have signed, to action.
Thank you very much. We can use advocacy to make policymakers to stand by their words, to not forget promises that they made, to not forget their duties to the people that they govern. And if they signed all these documents and the world is watching and they are doing nothing about it, and we have platforms to, we're just being magnanimous by saying to remind them, because you only remind people things that they have forgotten, not things that they deliberately chose to ignore. But yes, an advocate is like a societal ombudsman or watchman that calls attention of people who should know to those responsibilities that they owe the society so that they can be held accountable. Thank you very much, Sonen. Yes, any other takers before we move on? Lovaya Monluo, can we hear you? What do we do with advocacy? Why are you on the call?
Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me, ma.
We can hear you.
Okay, so they mentioned some of the points that I wanted to point out. But I will just say in addition that advocacy is also instrumental in pushing for funding. So if the purpose of the project is made known through advocacy, then we will be able to get enough funds either from the government or non-governmental bodies. So I've just heard that it's an instrument for funding the projects that we want to advocate for. Thank you.
Very much. Advocacy thrives on adequate funding, and it's important for us to know how to do this so that we can get resources for the policies, concepts, ideas, ideologies that we want to advocate for. I'd just like to give one or two instances still in support of why we need advocacy or the importance of advocacy. So we've mentioned already, I'm trying to remember who it was that mentioned it. I think it was Adeboye Janet that talked about the fact that advocacy helps to give voice to those who are marginalized. Advocacy also is very useful in pushing for legislation. And I'll give one recent example. So Nigeria is a country where, I don't know, pardon me for saying this, some other things that you think are unimaginable or absurd or cannot happen, you see them happening in Nigeria, and sometimes we make skits out of them, and then that's the end of the story. This morning, somebody was playing back a video of a popular politician who said anyone that cannot stand the pain of rigging, and he said, beg your pardon, I don't know, he quickly changed rigging to something else, and nothing was done about it. But that's not even where I'm going. Now, a man attempted suicide in Lagos on one of the popular bridges. And fortunately, people saw him while he was trying to take his own life, and they rescued him. And of course, you want to applaud them. But then what happens next? They start to beat him up. So you rescued someone who attempted suicide, and then you beat him to a pulp, almost maiming him, almost killing him in the process until he was rescued. So that was being rescued for a second time. So Nigeria, up until the year, I think 2002, 2003, was operating the Lunacy Act as far as mental health was concerned. And under the Lunacy Act, anyone who had mental illness could not be voted for and should not vote or hold a political position. Now, fortunately, because of the efforts of some mental health advocates, we have the Mental Health Act, which was passed into law, I think in 2023. But even in this act, suicide, or pardon me, if someone who attempts suicide is incarcerated, I hope you can still hear me. How are we accommodating the fact that there is a possibility that this person attempted suicide as a result of ill health? This is a case of victimizing the victim. Advocacy helps us not just to speak for the marginalized, but to also ensure that government policies are not victimizing victims. And this is just one example. How can you criminalize suicide? How does that help this person who attempted to take his life? In other words, we are just encouraging people who attempt suicide to make sure they complete it. So if you attempt suicide, make sure it is successful. Otherwise, you go to jail. What kind of policy is that? Advocacy helps us to push for social justice. It helps us to push for healthy legislation and policies. It also helps the helpless, because there are people who will not be able to do anything on their own because they do not have the resources. But then, with all of us putting our voices together, using the platforms that we have, then we can speak for the voiceless. There are so many more reasons why advocacy is important. For us as advocates, doing this is not just because we want to be passionate for a cause, it's because we want to see change happen. And if that is not one of the reasons you are involved in advocacy, then we may need to go back to the drawing table. An advocate is someone who is interested in change, who does not want the status quo, is negative one, to continue as it is. And then say, well, we can't do anything about it. This is Nigeria. That's how things run. No. When we know how things should run, then we should seek ways to make sure that things run in that way. When we engage in advocacy, we become better informed, we become more confident, and we build our self-esteem. And we also derive joy in seeing people that are helped because we spoke up. And for one of us who talked about harmful practices like female genital mutilation, one of the gains for all the people who took part on that project is going back to those communities and seeing that lives have been saved, that nobody had to bleed to death or contract any infection because of some of the tools that were used for the genital cutting. For those who work in areas of gender-based violence, is to see that we do not then have celebrated cases like we had, I think that was 2 years ago, with the popular female singer. And I'm trying to remember her name now. You know, advocacy helps us to see change happen. And this is lofty. This is very helpful. And this speaks to healthy communities and communities that are stronger because some people dared. I don't know if we have other contributions on this before we move on to another aspect of our discussion. What are the direct benefits to us as individuals when we engage in advocacy? Any takers? Please, if you have not spoken and you're on the call, this is an opportunity to share your knowledge with us. What do we stand to benefit when we stand up for social justice or for the needs of others? Anybody? Is anyone willing to share with us personal benefits to us in advocacy? Anybody?
Hello, my name is Pamela. So I'll just speak to some of the benefits of advocacy. I think one significant benefit is the ability to see change. We know that advocacy is able to shape laws, policies, and regulations to address systemic issues. I'd like to bring to bear um, the EndSARS protests that we mentioned earlier. I think one of the things that we advocated for during that EndSARS protest was to end police brutality and to advocate, better welfare for police officers. It was my first time saying that, during that, before the end of that, before that protest escalated, one thing that began to circulate in the media was the government's action, the plan of action. I think there was this 5 points, that the government came up with to, make the lives of police officers better. So it was good to see that if advocacy is well conducted, if it's carried out in a way that should be carried out, it's able to influence change and decision making. Advocacy too can lead to better allocation of resources and improved services in same clients. We know that there are different things that goes into the advocacy process. So it may not be we may not be seeing the impact directly, but then there's an increased awareness and this can lead to impact eventually. And some of the advocacies that we have seen, especially like someone mentioned on the call area, in health, for health advocacies like female genital mutilation, we have seen that it has increased, it has reduced the rates of mutilation generally. And you see that communities and individuals are, they are more aware about the dangers of mutilating their daughters. They have come to realize that female genital mutilation offers no benefit, and then more people are becoming enlightened, even for, health workers who may sometimes support community people or individuals to mutilate their children. They are coming into that understanding that it's not a beneficial process. So there's an increased awareness across these spheres or sectors, and we have a decline in that health outcome that we're trying to advocate for. It's also changing, through some of the activities to like going to the communities. You've seen that there's a cultural shift, a change in societal attitudes about things that there's a redefinition of what is actually transitional and what is just what we are doing that offers no benefit. So we see that there's a cultural shift and stigma, the stereotypes surrounding some of these issues are being we are changing the stereotypes, and more people are coming to understand their rights and roles in making their communities better. So advocacy too has the opportunity to bring people to that point where they are empowered. We know that some of the issues in health, I'm also taking a cue from some of the health advocacies that I've seen. Advocacies in family planning has increased to autonomy for women. More women are more, they have more reproductive autonomy. They're able to make decisions about their own health, and they're able to, stand by their own decisions. Sometimes without the support of, the people in their own lives. So it has increased, and they are more empowered, and they are more able to focus on their goals and, accomplish more for themselves and their children. So advocacy offers many benefits. Thank you.
And to imagine that you were not going to speak, we would have lost all of this beautiful, useful information. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us and for all the very useful examples that you have given us. We appreciate that. Thank you. I see that my namesake has her hands raised. Olayinka Shubiaro, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm in a public place though, and the last week I just spoke a lot of our minds. Particularly, I was going to stress on the fact that not only does it build the confidence and self-esteem of the person advocating, also builds the confidence of the people or the court, the community that one is advocating for. It empowers them, because when you know you're right, when you know what is good for you, you can go all out. So they can go all out and speak for themselves. So that's basically what I was going to hammer on, and I guess the last week I mentioned it, towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you for putting the searchlight back on the people we are interacting with or engaging with. So again, nothing for us without us. And it's not about us really, it's about them, because we're not necessarily advocating for ourselves a lot of the times. Yes, many times we're also involved, but a lot of the times is because of what we have seen and where we have seen the need for redress. We'll just briefly say one or two things about advocacy in politics. We already mentioned that in passing as we were speaking. There are issues that have to do with legislation, issues that have to do with politics, issues that have to do with the rights of the electorate, and the rights of the people that we have voted for to provide credible governance. So, and well, again, this is Nigeria. Towards elections, we see all kinds of coalitions being formed, because advertisers will say you have to identify with your advertising messages. So we'll see group of people with some very funny names and saying, oh, we are in support of these. So yes, some of these things are bastardized, but it would be very good for us to also have healthy advocacy for politics in Nigeria. Maybe this way we'll be able to make people in government to become more, how do we say it? Maybe we'll be able to make people in government to become more responsible and to know that they are being watched and their activities are important to the people that they are governing. Now, let's quickly talk about some skills that we would need to be good in advocacy. And I'll start with the one that I think, well, we'll still talk a lot more about this tomorrow, hopefully, because we'll be talking about the media then. So one of the skills I believe we need is interpersonal communication skills. We have to be people who love people to be able to do well in advocacy. You must be a person's lover. You must care about people. It's important. It's very, very important. Other aspects of interpersonal communication have to do with listening skills. You should be someone who is a good listener. We get information a lot when we pay attention to people, when we listen to them. So listening skills are very important. We should also be people that have emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence. In advocacy, we would interact with people in different places, people across cultures, and it will be very helpful if we don't stand out negatively in the places we go to. We need to work on our public speaking skills to do well in advocacy. There will always be a need for us to speak to what we're advocating. And sometimes it's even at short notice. So we need to be people who can speak off the cuff. We need to be people who can quickly organize our thoughts and speak convincingly about issues for which we are advocating. Still talking about skills, we need to be avid readers and lifelong learners. If we do not soak ourselves like sponges in information, we may just discover that our knowledge would expire. So good advocates are avid readers. We also need to improve our problem-solving skills to be good in advocacy. How do we improve our problem-solving skills? When we read, when we interact with others, when we seek other people's opinions, when we listen, we can sift through ideas. When we're observant, when we seek information, the right kind of information, then we know better ways of doing things so that we will not repeat existing mistakes. Good advocates also have leadership skills, and this is leadership by example. It's not so much being able to order people around. It's more about being able to get our fingers soiled as we do things. We've mentioned a bit about negotiation earlier, and I think this is another skill that we need to build. We need to be able to negotiate. We need to be able to convince people about our points of view. So long, we've talked so much about advocacy. I wouldn't want to burst any bubbles, but please, no matter how hard we try, there are some causes that are fraught with challenges. So there are people that are averse to change, and some of these people will always be waiting for us in one corner, doing their best to frustrate our efforts. So please let's bear that in mind, that sometimes the best of our efforts may meet with resistance by people who do not like change or by people who are benefiting from things not working well. Also, there are complexities in structures, whether governance structures, societal structures, and this may act as barricade to some of the changes that we're expecting or the changes that we want to see. But this should not deter us. Rather, we should just look for better ways of achieving our objectives. Time is really not our friend, but I'd like to reiterate one or two things before we take questions. For us to be successful in our advocacy, we must be conversant with what the issues are. So research is important. In fact, we cannot be successful in advocacy if there is no problem. Yes, advocacy is about problem solving, is about carefully identifying problems and understanding them, then defining a way of attracting or attacking them. Advocacy also works when we build very strong coalitions or when we've identified clearly stakeholders who will help to drive our advocacy home. This is very important. Advocacy thrives on clear communication. Clear communication. We should be able to say what we wish to accomplish, and we should have key messages so that no one is in doubt as to what exactly we're trying to achieve. I think I'd like to stop here so that we can take questions. I'm trying to get my video to come on, and I don't know. I'm having some challenges doing that. I hope I'll be able to do it before the call is over. Thank you. So
All right,
I'd like to hand over now. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olayinka. I'm sure we have benefited one or two things from the first session for today. So please, if any of us have any question, clarifications, or more comments that we need to make, please let's raise our hands. Questions? Anyone? Clarifications or comments? I'm not seeing any hands up yet. No question. No comment. I hope you can hear me. Probably I'm not being heard.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to be sure I'm being heard. Okay, so questions from any of us as it relates to our topic for this session, Introduction to Advocacy and Data-Driven Solution. Anyone? Okay, no question. Let's take it as no question. So we understand everything that has been said. That makes Dr. Olayinka Igbokwari a perfect teacher. Thank you very much for that work, ma. So, we perfectly understand all we have said. Okay, so
it would have been, yeah, I know that we had opportunities to speak during the session, but I'm sure there are still people that have not spoken to us, and it would be great to hear their voices and tell us maybe their takeaways or other things that they would like us to look at tomorrow when we come together again. So I don't think there is any such thing as a perfect teacher. In fact, a teacher should be disappointed when there are no questions and no comments.
But the session was very interactive, so I believe they were making their comments and questions known at the same time. All right, so thank you. In case we still have any questions to ask as we move on. Okay, Oyelola Adeoye.
Good, I think we have a...
I have questions.
Thank you.
It's me. You have the floor.
Questions.
Hello?
Oyelola
Hello,
Adeoye.
thank you so much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm on. Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So just as a way of comment, yes, I want to really commend Dr. Layinka. It's really, really, I can say she's an advocate for a good advocacy. So she's done very well. Not that we can't understand, we really understand what she taught us perfectly. And I want to really commend her patience, her explanation, her thoughtfulness, and taking us through at least almost everybody that doesn't even know what advocacy is all about before can say one or two things, even without looking at the books or the jottings or whatever. So I want to really say thank you to her. So, and we hope that as we move forward, we're going to learn so much from her because I know she's loaded. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Oyilola.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, Adeboye Bose.
Right. I want to appreciate our participators. The lecture was so straightforward, and I was able to grab one or two things. Because even me, I don't know about advocacy. I know that people do campaign and all that. But now I have this question because during the presentation, you said supporters are very, very important in advocacy. So I'm not going. So I've discovered a problem in the society now that I want a solution to, and I need supporters. So how do I get this supporter? And I'm even talking about genuine ones because there may be some people that may even be working against what I'm trying to do. So I want to know how to get supporters, or maybe doing the other lectures. So I want an insight into that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Adeboye Bose.
Should we wait and see if there are other questions, or should we just take this one straight away?
We should take this straight away.
All right. Thank you. So, Bose, thanks. I think the lecture tomorrow will talk briefly about identifying stakeholders. And it's important for us to also identify people who are doing work that is similar to what we're doing, so that we do not try to rediscover the wheel. And also so that we would be able to harness the kind of support that will be very useful to us. So if you don't mind, I'll be able to delve more into this tomorrow, TV. We'll be able to talk more about how to identify stakeholders and how to collaborate with existing advocacy group. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Any other question before we end this session? Any other? Okay, I can see your hand up again. Okay. All right, thank you. Please, let's briefly turn on our cameras to take pictures with. Okay, I don't think Dr. Layinka's camera is doing somehow, but you can turn on your own pictures, your own videos, so we can take a brief picture, just 1 or 2 shots. And after that, we go on a 30 minutes break. We go on a 30 minutes break. Okay, thank you, Mr. Dayo. Okay, I'm seeing our faces, thank you. So we'll be taking a brief picture now, just a short one. Okay, some videos are still not on yet. Okay. We're still waiting for some few people. Mr. Atomori, Stella Uchena, Stephen Chuku. We need your videos on, please. Okay, so let's just take what we have. I'm sure we still have other times to take pictures. So thank you for the brief time. So we'll be going on a short break now. And after that, we'll be coming for our second session. So this break will be over by 3:10. So by 3:10, please let's all be here again by 3:10. So we can go around now, stretch our legs, get our teas and go, whatever we have to get, our coffees. So we're back by 3:10. So thank you very much. So by then our second speaker will be available too. So thank you.